I let my daughter-in-law's family believe I was a poor old mother until they learned who really held the power.
I had been a mother-in-law for 3 years before I realized something important. No one was really looking at me. They saw me, yes. They greeted me politely. They smiled when necessary. But they never truly saw me. I was Daniel's mother, a widow, a woman who lived alone in a modest townhouse at the edge of a quiet American suburb. No flashy jewelry, no luxury car, no stories about trips or investments. Just a woman who cooked her own meals, reused grocery bags, and wore coats until the lining gave up. And that was exactly how I wanted it. Daniel never knew how much money I had. Not because I was hiding something shameful, but because I was protecting something precious. I grew up believing that money, when revealed too early, can distort love. It can poison gratitude. It can replace effort with entitlement. So I kept my silence. And silence, I learned, makes people very comfortable showing their true nature. Daniel called me on a Monday afternoon. His voice was careful, too careful. "Mom, are you free this Saturday?" "I believe so," I said, stirring soup on the stove. "My in-laws are visiting from out of state. They want us all to have dinner together. They suggested this new Italian restaurant downtown." I waited. There it was, the pause, the one that carries unspoken instructions. Then he added, quietly, "Mom, maybe wear something simple. They're very particular." Particular, a gentle word that often hides something sharper underneath. I turned off the stove and sat down. "What have you told them about me?" I asked. Another pause. "I said you're retired," Daniel replied, "that you live modestly, that you've always been simple." Simple. That word landed heavier than it should have. Not because it was wrong, but because of the way he said it, as if simplicity were an apology. I looked around my kitchen, the old wooden table, the chipped mug Daniel had given me years ago. "All right," I said calmly. "I'll be there." After we hung up, I sat in silence for a long time. Then I made a decision. If they believed I was a poor, unimportant woman, I would let them, because I wanted to know how they treated someone they thought had nothing to offer. Saturday arrived quietly. I chose the oldest dress I owned, brown, loose, wrinkled despite ironing, flat shoes with worn soles, no makeup, no watch. I packed my belongings into a faded canvas tote, the kind people associate with thrift stores and library books. When I looked in the mirror, I saw exactly what they expected to see: a harmless, aging woman, a mother who would stay in her place. Perfect. The restaurant was expensive in a way that didn't need to announce itself. Dim lights, white tablecloths, menus without prices. Daniel stood up when he saw me. His smile flickered, just for a second. I recognized it immediately. Embarrassment. Beside him stood my daughter-in-law, Claire. She was lovely, always had been, but her eyes darted briefly to my shoes, then away. And then I saw them. Harold and Margaret Whitmore, Claire's parents. They sat upright, dressed impeccably, radiating the confidence of people who believed they belonged anywhere money could buy a chair. Margaret's smile froze when she saw me. "Oh," she said, "you must be Daniel's mother." Her handshake was quick, her grip weak. Harold nodded once, already distracted. I was seated at the far end of the table. No one asked if I was comfortable. Margaret took charge immediately. She ordered wine without asking. She spoke about their flight, their hotel, the renovation of their second home. Prices were mentioned casually but deliberately. "Oh, this place charges extra for imported olive oil," she said with a laugh, "but quality is worth it." When the menus arrived, I pretended to struggle. "These words are Italian?" I asked softly. Margaret smiled, the way people smile at children. "I'll order something simple for you," she said. "We don't want to overwhelm you." Daniel shifted in his seat. No one defended me. Halfway through dinner, Margaret leaned toward me. "So," she said lightly, "do you live alone?" "Yes," I replied. "That must be hard, financially." I shrugged. "I manage." She nodded, satisfied. "Well, at our age, it's important not to become a burden to our children." Burden. Daniel's hand clenched under the table. Margaret continued, smiling. "We've helped Claire and Daniel quite a bit. Down payment, furniture, a few other things." She looked at me. "And you?" "I helped as much as I could," I said quietly. "How admirable," she replied. That was when I understood. This wasn't just curiosity. This was evaluation. I could have ended it there. I could have laughed politely and gone home. But something inside me hardened, not with anger, but with clarity. I had spent decades watching people like this across boardroom tables. They always revealed themselves when they believed they were safe from consequences. So, I stayed silent, and I let them continue, because Margaret Whitmore was about to make one final mistake, and she had no idea that the woman she was measuring and dismissing held the power to undo everything she took pride in.
Margaret Whitmore had the confidence of a woman who believed she was untouchable, not because she was cruel by nature, but because she had lived long enough surrounded by people who never challenged her. Money had insulated her, politeness had protected her, and silence, especially the silence of women like me, had enabled her. She lifted her glass again. "This wine," she said, swirling it gently, "is imported directly from Tuscany, $400 a bottle. But once you understand quality, you can never go back." She smiled at me. "Do you drink wine, dear?" "Only occasionally," I replied, "and usually whatever is on sale." She laughed softly, the sound light but dismissive. "Well, not everyone develops a refined palate. That comes with exposure, travel, education." Harold nodded in agreement. Claire stared at her plate. Daniel tried to change the subject, talking about work, but Margaret interrupted him without apology. "So, Daniel," she said, "have you and Claire thought about long-term planning?" "Yes," Daniel replied cautiously. "We're taking it step by step." Margaret waved a manicured hand. "Of course, but planning requires stability, and stability means knowing where responsibilities lie." Her gaze slid back to me. "At your age," she continued, "it's understandable that a son might feel obligated to worry about his mother." Obligated. I took a slow sip of water. "Margaret," I said gently, "what exactly are you suggesting?" She smiled, pleased that I'd finally engaged. "Well," she said, "Harold and I were thinking perhaps we could help you." Daniel looked up sharply. "Help her how?" he asked. Margaret placed her napkin carefully on the table. "A small monthly allowance," she said. "Nothing extravagant, just enough so you can live comfortably, and Daniel won't feel the pressure of worrying." The words landed like stones. I didn't respond right away. I let the silence stretch. Claire's eyes filled with panic. Daniel's jaw tightened. "And in return?" I asked calmly. Margaret tilted her head, as if surprised. "Just healthy boundaries," she said. "Less dependence, less involvement. Young marriages need space." There it was, the offer. Charity wrapped in control. Kindness shaped like exclusion. They wanted to pay me to disappear. Daniel stood up abruptly. "That's inappropriate," he said. "You don't get to—" "Daniel," Margaret interrupted, her voice firm. "We're speaking as adults."
I raised my hand. "It's all right," I said gently. "I'd like to understand fully." Margaret smiled, relieved. "Of course," she said. "Transparency is important." I leaned forward slightly. "How much," I asked, "would my absence be worth to you?" Margaret blinked. "Well, perhaps $500 a month." I nodded. "And how much," I continued, "did you contribute to the house Daniel and Claire live in?" Margaret straightened. $40,000, she said proudly. "And the wedding?" 25. "And the car?" "Leased under Harold's company." I smiled faintly. "So you invested over $65,000 into their life together?" "Yes," she replied, "because we believe in supporting our children." "Then tell me," I said quietly, "why am I worth only $500 a month to you?" The table went silent. Margaret's smile faltered. "That's not what I meant." "It is exactly what you meant. You calculated my value. You just didn't expect me to ask for the math." Harold cleared his throat. "I think you're taking this too personally. My wife was only trying to help." I looked directly at him. "Help who?" I asked. "Me or your sense of control?" Daniel exhaled sharply. "Mom, I didn't know this was coming." "I know," I replied softly, "and that's why I stayed quiet until now." I turned back to Margaret. "You've spent the entire evening talking about money, yet you haven't once asked me how I'm doing, if I'm healthy, if I'm lonely." Margaret's lips pressed into a thin line. "I assumed." "You assumed," I repeated, "because assumptions are easier than empathy." The waiter approached cautiously. "Is everything all right?" "Yes," I said. "We're just having an honest conversation." Margaret shifted in her seat. "I don't appreciate being spoken to like this, especially after you misrepresented yourself." I smiled. "Did I?" I asked gently, "or did I simply allow you to reveal yourself?" Her eyes narrowed. "What exactly are you implying?" I took a breath. Then I said it. "For the past 30 years, I have worked in private finance." Daniel froze. I continued. "I currently manage a family investment fund with assets exceeding $300 million. Claire's fork clattered onto her plate. Harold stared at me. "That's impossible," Margaret said. "Daniel would know." I turned to my son. "Would you?" I asked gently. Daniel shook his head slowly. "No," he whispered. "I had no idea." "That was intentional," I said. "I wanted you to build your life without expecting anything from me." Margaret laughed, short and disbelieving. "This is absurd," she said. "You don't look—" "Like someone with power," I finished. "That's the point." I reached into my canvas bag and placed a simple metal card on the table. Not flashy, not dramatic, just fact. "This card," I said, "is tied to the fund Harold applied to last quarter." Harold's face drained of color. "That application," I continued, "was waiting for my final review." Margaret stood up. "You did this deliberately," she said. "You humiliated us." "No," I replied calmly. "I observed you." Daniel stood beside me now. "Mom, I'm so sorry." I squeezed his hand. "This isn't about apology. It's about truth." I turned back to Margaret. "You've spent the entire evening talking about money, yet you haven't once asked me how I'm doing, if I'm healthy, if I'm lonely." Margaret's lips pressed into a thin line. "I assumed." "You assumed," I repeated, "because assumptions are easier than empathy." The waiter approached cautiously. "Is everything all right?" "Yes," I said. "We're just having an honest conversation." Margaret shifted in her seat. "I don't appreciate being spoken to like this, especially after you misrepresented yourself." I smiled. "Did I?" I asked gently, "or did I simply allow you to reveal yourself?" Her eyes narrowed. "What exactly are you implying?" I took a breath. Then I said it. "For the past 30 years, I have worked in private finance." Daniel froze. I continued.
I currently manage a family investment fund with assets exceeding $300 million. Claire's fork clattered onto her plate. Harold stared at me. That's impossible, Margaret said. Daniel would know. I turned to my son. Would you? I asked gently. Daniel shook his head slowly. No, he whispered. I had no idea. That was intentional, I said. I wanted you to build your life without expecting anything from me. Margaret laughed, short and disbelieving. This is absurd, she said. You don't look like someone with power, I finished. That's the point. I reached into my canvas bag and placed a simple metal card on the table. Not flashy, not dramatic, just fact. This card, I said, is tied to the fund Harold applied to last quarter. Harold's face drained of color. That application, I continued, was waiting for my final review. Margaret stood up. You did this deliberately, she said. You humiliated us. No, I replied calmly. I observed you. Daniel stood beside me now. Mom, I'm so sorry. I squeezed his hand. This isn't about apology, it's about truth. I turned back to Margaret. You've spent the entire evening talking about money, yet you haven't once asked me how I'm doing, if I'm healthy, if I'm lonely. Margaret's lips pressed into a thin line. I assumed. You assumed, I repeated, because assumptions are easier than empathy. The waiter approached cautiously. Is everything all right? Yes, I said. We're just having an honest conversation. Margaret shifted in her seat. I don't appreciate being spoken to like this, especially after you misrepresented yourself. I smiled. Did I? I asked gently, or did I simply allow you to reveal yourself? Her eyes narrowed. What exactly are you implying? I took a breath. Then I said it. For the past 30 years, I have worked in private finance. Daniel froze. I continued. I currently manage a family investment fund with assets exceeding $300 million. Claire's fork clattered onto her plate. Harold stared at me. That's impossible, Margaret said. Daniel would know. I turned to my son. Would you? I asked gently. Daniel shook his head slowly. No, he whispered. I had no idea. That was intentional, I said. I wanted you to build your life without expecting anything from me. The air outside the restaurant felt colder than it had moments before, not because of the weather, but because something irreversible had just happened. Daniel walked beside me in silence for a full block before he finally spoke. Mom, he said quietly, I didn't know about any of it. I stopped and turned toward him. That's true, I said, but you also didn't ask. His shoulders sank. I thought you were struggling. I worried about you. I placed my hand on his arm. Worrying about your mother doesn't make you weak, I said. It makes you human. He swallowed. But letting others treat her like she's less, I continued, that's something you must never allow again, not with me, not with anyone. He nodded, eyes wet. I understand now, he said. I really do. We stood there for a moment, the city moving around us, indifferent. Then he asked the question I knew was coming. Are you angry with me? I thought carefully before answering. No, I said. I'm disappointed, but not in you. I'm disappointed in the silence that trained you to believe respect depends on appearances. He exhaled, relieved but shaken. Behind us, the restaurant doors opened. Claire stepped outside. She looked different now. No perfect posture, no confident smile. Just a young woman standing between two worlds that had just collided. Mrs. Harris, she said softly, please wait. I turned. She took a few hesitant steps toward me. I didn't know they would say those things, she said quickly. I didn't know they would treat you like that. I looked at her steadily. But you knew who they were,
I replied. You just hoped they wouldn't show it. Tears welled in her eyes. I was afraid, she admitted. They've always been like that, measuring, comparing. I grew up thinking love was something you earned. Daniel looked at her, startled. I never wanted to be like them either, she continued, but I didn't know how to stop them either. I softened then. Fear doesn't make you cruel, but silence enables cruelty. She nodded, wiping her cheeks. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm truly sorry. I didn't hug her. Not yet. Some apologies need time to breathe before they become real. The consequences came faster than they expected. 2 days later, Harold Whitmore's assistant called my office. Polite, nervous. The funding request was withdrawn. Not rejected, withdrawn. Harold didn't call me directly. He never did. People like him preferred distance when pride was wounded. Margaret, however, sent an email. Long, emotional, defensive. She spoke of misunderstandings, of disrespect, of betrayal. She accused me of manipulation. She demanded a conversation. I did not respond. Not every door deserves reopening. That Sunday morning, Daniel came to my home alone. He sat at my kitchen table, the same table where he once did homework, elbows too close to his papers. Daniel, he said, I talked to Claire for hours. I poured tea and waited. She told me things I never knew, how her parents controlled everything with money, how love always came with conditions. I nodded. That kind of upbringing leaves marks, I said. He looked up at me. I told her something, Mom. I told her that I choose you, not over her, but alongside her. That if we're going to build a life together, it won't be under anyone else's thumb. My chest tightened. And? I asked. And she agreed, he said. It wasn't easy. She cried, but she agreed. He hesitated. We're setting boundaries, with her parents, with everyone. I reached across the table and took his hand. That, I said, is the moment a boy becomes a man. Claire came 3 days later, alone, no makeup, no jewelry. She looked smaller without all the armor. I didn't come to explain my parents. I came to explain myself. I gestured for her to sit. I stayed quiet for too long because standing up felt like betrayal, but now I see silence is its own kind of violence. I studied her face. And what do you want now? I asked. She took a breath. I want to learn how to live without measuring, how to love without controlling, how to be strong without being cruel. I nodded slowly. Then you must accept something first, I said. I am not here to replace your parents, and I will never compete with them. She nodded. I know. But, I continued, I will not tolerate being diminished, not again. She met my eyes. I understand. That was the moment I hugged her, not as an act of forgiveness, but as an opening. Life didn't transform overnight. Margaret remained distant, Harold remained silent. The Whitmores sent fewer invitations, then none. And something unexpected happened. Peace settled in. Daniel and Claire grew closer, not richer, not flashier, but calmer. They stopped comparing, stopped explaining. They began choosing. As for me, I returned to my routines. Morning walks, simple meals, work that mattered but didn't define me. I remained invisible to those who measured worth by noise, and visible to those who mattered. Months later, Daniel asked me something while we were gardening. Mom, he said, do you regret not telling me the truth earlier? I smiled. No, I said, but I'm glad you learned it when you did. Why? Because now, I replied, you know that dignity isn't inherited, it's practiced. I did not pretend to be poor to humiliate anyone. I did it to confirm something I already knew. that character reveals itself most clearly when it believes it is safe from consequences. Harold and Margaret had money. I had clarity, and clarity lasts longer. If you've ever been dismissed because you looked simple, if you've ever been underestimated because you didn't advertise your worth, remember this: the loudest people often have the least to say, and the quiet ones, they're usually the ones holding the keys. Have you ever been treated differently because people thought you had less? Did you stay silent, or did you choose dignity? Share your story in the comments. You're not alone.